Hello, hey, and welcome to my tent, a place to hear life experiences, different opinions, a range of journeys, and a viewpoint different than our own. A place to challenge our own thoughts, a space to learn a little bit, and I promise some fun along the way. I believe we're better when we let a range of people into our tents, so welcome to mine. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Welcome to My Tent podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Johnston, and we are here today with a solo episode. And I have been wanting to make these solo episodes a little bit shorter with some more digestible information that you can all utilize, listen to, and think about as you're on your own journeys. And so today I really want to talk about the concept of small habits, because it's something that comes up in conversation for me frequently, where a lot of the clients that I'm speaking to, as well as myself, work through this mindset shift around small habits adding up to the greater whole. I've talked about this a ton on here, both on the podcast, on social, that mindset work is incredibly important as we're thinking about personal development and growth journeys. And it's oftentimes one of the harder things for people to wrap their head around, because physical improvement is easier to see and easier to feel. So while fitness is a large portion of a lot of people's personal development journeys, it is much easier to feel that you are sore from a workout than it is to see that your mindset is shifting and developing alongside this growth journey. So I want to talk about small habits, because a lot of times what I see, and I have done this also myself, is people catch themselves saying, is that 5 minutes that I just did moving the needle? Or is that thing that I just checked off my list even enough to make an impact? And I get it, because it's hard to embrace the long-term game and the long-term mindset often when we're thinking about what this looks like for us later down the line. It's like a lot of us want to see an immediate turn and an immediate impact because that feels good, and it a lot of times is very encouraging for us to keep going. But the way that I think about small habits is I think of it like Legos. And yes, I do have a 2-year-old, so maybe that's just what is really driving with me right now. But I think of it like Legos, because a lot of these Lego sets are very intricate and very large. And if you get to the end product and you have created this sometimes very impressive Lego creation, it is compiled of a lot of teeny tiny pieces. Also, the teeny tiny pieces that you may step on, which hurt like hell. If you know, you know. But when you look at this greater compilation, you see that this creation has been compiled of a ton of small pieces. And that's how I think about small habits, is a piece of that puzzle that then adds up eventually to something that is completed and created and whole. And yes, I understand that that completed piece oftentimes feels more impressive to show and impressive to talk about, but it really is important to see and evaluate all of those little tiny actions along the way that you did in order to get to that end destination. The piece to this that I really want to make clear is you also cannot get to a completed Lego rocket ship, maybe, for example, without staying consistent with putting those small pieces into the puzzle. The consistency piece is where I also see a big disconnect, because the small habits may feel frustrating and may not feel like they're making this immediate impact, and they may not feel as good as something that gives more instant gratification. But they're really important, because if we don't do those consistently, the end destination will never arrive or will never get completed. So yes, those 5-minute actions 100% matter to the greater impact of the whole. And I think the important piece is how we talk to ourselves around that and how we think of those pieces, knowing that eventually they're going to compile. So we can also do some math here, and I am no mathematician, so please forgive me if my math is a little shaky. But say you do something consistently for 5 minutes every single day. 20, 25, 30, 35 minutes a week. There you go. So you now have already taken, this was just 5 minutes, to this was 35 minutes in a week. Now multiply that by a month, multiply that by a year, multiply that by 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And then how much of that time is actually completely grown over the course of those days, weeks, months, and years. We need to remind ourselves of these things, especially because a lot of us are very strapped on time. We have very busy schedules, we have very busy lives, and we have things that are pulling us in a lot of different directions. And this is also another piece to the puzzle that I want to talk about, because oftentimes growth is not glamorous. And marketing would tell us otherwise, right? There are these things out there, this $800 product that will change your life immediately. And there's this $300 meal service that's going to completely revamp your health and your life. And while some of these things are probably great products, and we all have the right to make decisions on where we put our money, oftentimes growth can be incredibly not sexy. I think that throws some people off, because we see a lot of people only talking about their, first off, finished product. So they're not even really telling us the steps they took along the way, and those tiny little pieces and those breadcrumbs that they've collected over the course of time to show us that final, pretty, wrapped up with a bow product. And they're also not showing us that or the course of action that they took to get there, because it is just this boiling it down to a small habit done consistently. I'll give you a real life example that I went through the other day, because one of my goals in my personal development and self-growth journey is to both cook more at home and save money. Those two do go hand in hand in aspects, because, grocery shopping and getting your groceries and cooking by nature does save you money. But I'm looking into the financial wealth and aspect and health of my life in total. But those are two goals that I'm really working on right now, to become a little bit more consistent with my habits on cooking and eating my own food. And then also just thinking about saving money and being financially stable. So the other night I was exhausted. I was so tired. And all I wanted to do was get on Uber Eats and order delivery. And everything is so expensive right now. I feel like even just for a personal dinner, I can't get away without spending at least $50 on Uber Eats. And so I decided to implement a small action that I could do that would turn a little bit of a profit for me and would move the needle just slightly. And so what I did was I made a very boring, very unsexy egg sandwich. I also didn't have it in me to cook some complex meal. I just didn't have that level of energy. So I took 5 minutes to make an egg and put it on some toasted bread with some avocado. And that right there was a 5-minute action that will compile to the greater whole. And think about that, how that's interconnected now into a bunch of other different things. So I both worked on a habit that was going towards my goal of cooking more and finances, because I ended up saving that money that I was going to spend. But I also started to trust myself more with my consistency. So we're now tying the consistency piece back into the small habit. The more often we promise ourselves that we're going to do something, even if it is a 5-minute activity, and the more times that we complete that, we are either sometimes consciously or subconsciously training ourselves to trust ourselves. To say, I know that I can live up to the actions that I set out for to keep going on this journey. The more times that we resist that and decide to not do that small habit, the more comfortable we get with just saying, it doesn't really matter. It's not that big of a deal. Should I have maybe said, fine, I'll just order the food? The next time that this issue comes around for me, or this resistance and this roadblock comes around for me, I would say, it felt really good to do that. I'm just going to do it. Fine. I did it last time. Fine. I'll just do it again. As opposed to, Sarah, you know that you've been here before, and you know that you can get up and spend the 5 minutes to do something that's going to benefit you in the long term. So the more often that I accomplish these small habits and these small routines, the more trust I have with myself, and the more ability I have to feel like I can contain and gain that consistency that I need to make that long term. So now, of course, there's days where we will want to order in and treat ourselves. We let ourselves have those small luxuries here and there. But if I come up into this resistance and this roadblock, let's say 25 times in a year, and I opt to trust myself to stay consistent, think about that. An average of $50 for an Uber Eats order times 25, how much money I'd be saving in that year and how that contributes to my goal of being more mindful of my spending and understanding where my money is going. That's 25 times that I have trusted myself to stay consistent, which means I can then translate that to other goals and other habits. So it's a building process. All of these blocks are interconnected into each other, and then one piece fits into the next and the next into the next, which then ends up giving me that final finished product. Let's take this one step further. Should I have a monetary amount on my financial goal? So say I want to save $2,000 in a year and to have that in an emergency fund or a slush fund. When I look at it in one singular day, I only save $50. Like, it's not that big of a deal. But like we just mentioned, should I do that 25 times in a year? Think about how much that's contributing to that slush fund. And that's just one piece. That's one of the little Lego pieces. That one day I did it. And the next day it's a second Lego piece, and third and fourth and fifth, and so on and so forth. But what I think it's important to show, especially as a coach and as someone that works with people, are those small, very unsexy moments, those 5 minutes that I took. So eventually when I do share this little pretty bow, wrapped up bowed thing of look at my $2,000 that I saved, I can then also say these were the steps that I took to get there. And it wasn't some big fancy thing I had to purchase. And it wasn't some, multi-$1,000 investment that I had to make into anything. It was a really typical boring action that I did. And so I think it's important to talk about this stuff. And I just have been talking to a lot of my clients recently on what this looks like for them, where people often get discouraged that they feel like what they're doing is not making a difference. And if you find yourself in a position like this, I really encourage you to sit down and think about all of the very small habits that you do, maybe within a given day or over the course of the week. It does not even have to be every single day of the week, and start to understand what that looks like in a broader sense. What that 5 minutes of maybe journaling or meditation does for you in a day, a week, a year, and then years and years plus. Maybe what that walk around the block at the end of the night does for your mental health in that given day, but also what that does to your step goal and to your exercise and fitness goals. I think we really need to take a broader look at what all of this is doing to also understand if we're finding resistance or we don't want to do something, not just having to hang our hats on what it does for us in the immediate term. Being able to then critically think and say, okay, well, I know if I do this now, first off, I'm going to gain that trust with myself, and I'm going to prove to myself that I can stick to my word. So the next time this comes around, I'm not as intimidated. And also, I know that based on what I've thought about and looked at, in a year's time, here is why this moment matters. So that's what I wanted to chat about today. It's a pretty brief and quick episode and thought. But I've really been thinking about these small changes that I have been making and encouraging my clients to make, because they play alongside the really big other stuff that we have to do. And I find typically people are a little less discouraged or intimidated by these small habits. It's a little bit easier to incorporate them into our lives. So it is possible to find very big impacts with small changes and small activities. We don't need 4 hours a day to be implementing these complex and insane routines. I don't really personally know anyone who has 4 spare hours a day to do anything, let alone do something for themselves. We're all really pressed for time, and I feel like a lot of us, many of us, myself included, also find it uncomfortable to put ourselves first. And so maybe starting with these small habits that we can do consistently builds that routine, it builds that trust, and it really helps set you up to understand what this looks like in the broader sense and in the greater gains. So that is my motto for you on this Friday. If it's Friday when you are listening, happy Friday. We made it. My husband is finally back from a work trip. He has been gone since Sunday. So I have been solo parenting this week, which is maybe why this has been in my brain, because I feel like a lot of the big stuff that I wanted to get to this week did not happen, and that is okay. But a lot of my small action steps did get completed. And for that, I am proud, because I know that they are tallying up and adding up to the greater whole, my little Lego pieces that I have collected this entire week. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day and your week. We'll be back next week with some more episodes of the Welcome to My Tent podcast. As always, thank you so incredibly much for being here. I don't think I can convey in words properly how much appreciation I have for everyone who takes the time to listen and engage with me and share their thoughts about this podcast. You really have made this girl's dreams come true. So I appreciate you. Thank you. Have a great day. Love you. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Welcome to My Tent podcast. I hope you had as much fun listening as I do recording. I am so happy to have you here, and see you next episode.